Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Four Checks podcast. We are your Four Checks, and we are here to give you everything there is in the current community, state, culture of universes.
For the
Two of
culture.
us have had quite a big thing happen recently. Kevin Broberg and I just returned from Albuquerque. And I think before we get into anything else going on, we're just going to talk a little bit about what Albuquerque was like. I think before Broberg and I kind of talk about the event itself, I am kind of curious from Will and Tim. Did either of you watch Albuquerque at all?
Only a small bit. I watched the Devon attendee match, and because people were talking about Discord, and I watched the first game of the finals.
Yeah.
Other than that, I was raiding and playing Trials of Cold Steel.
I had it up in the other window or my other monitor,
Mhm.
while I was doing various things because I had the day off from work the Saturday and Sunday, thankfully. um, but I saw a decent amount of the games. I don't think I caught all of them, but I saw a decent amount. It was a good time.
Good, good. Was the stream kind of better than Denver in terms of like connection and things like that? Because I know Denver had a lot of disconnect issues and stuff like that.
As far as I know, I didn't see that many. There might have been like one or two, but it wasn't like a full like stream goes down and comes back up.
Okay,
But
cool, cool. And
I,
Paul, according to chat, apparently there was only one or two cuts. That's good to hear because glad to hear the viewer experience is getting a little bit better.
I know it was in. I know the day one stream was in two parts, and like when it came back on, like when it started, it was like a little
right.
bit of B-roll, and they said,
right.
"Oh yeah, hey, we're back after Godzilla destroyed our connection or whatever."
And hey, look, that's
And
always. I
Fair
mean, when
enough.
you're doing 8 hours, that's going to happen. I mean, we do 2 hour podcasts, and we've had where our stream cuts out. And that's because my computer sucks, but it still could happen. So good to hear kind of what the viewer experience is like. Let's go and talk a little bit about what the play experience was like. Broberg, I'm going to let you kind of start. Before we get into kind of the other things going on, what was the main event kind of like for you?
The main event went about as well as it can with a record of 0 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. I had a great time. I had some really engaging matches. I had a lot of things to learn. I had some uh, good stories, let's say, good, incredible runs of variance that I haven't experienced in quite some time. Um, like I played a deck with some two checks. I did not check a lot of twos in very bad situations. However, I did check. I did draw a hand of 6 attacks and then check 4 consecutive attacks, including on my boss to live. So it was great. It was great.
Ladies
Um,
and gentlemen, you're world champion.
World champ, baby. The world champ difference. Oh, man.
yeah, I played. I stressed out a whole bunch and did not prepare adequately or whatever. But I
Mhm.
built a 60 card Ymir deck that I think had some self respect, and lost. Unintentionally drew a close one against Pony in a match where I gave myself. I wound up with 3 turns to win as player one in game three and didn't quite get there in 3 turns. Um, Put myself in a good position, I thought, and with a little bit of time on the clock. Then I was playing against Pony, so he appropriately tried to kill me, and then it was not really close getting there, but completely reasonable time play from him. I think in the closing minutes of it all, and then I lost to Reiner twice, which is a thing I never thought it would happen to me. I
Reiner
lost to
1 or Reiner 2?
Reiner one, yeah. Reiner Braun, ruin you, play
What
long games, check forwards type stuff.
was
Yeah,
one of them Brett, or were there three Reiners ones running around? Because I played against Brett that weekend.
yeah. I did not immediately recognize either of my opponents.
yeah,
Okay.
Reiner one's a weird matchup for Ymir
Oh yeah, Reiner 1
in a
is.
number of ways.
I think Reiner 1 is one of those decks that like it sucks if you've planned for a specific meta. It sucks to face it when you go into a tournament because the like matchup curve is entirely different for Reiner than a lot of other characters. Like a lot of characters that are fine into the meta, just like a deck that D builds in the way Reiner 1 does or DRs in the way Reiner 1 does can be like weirdly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I love the matches, except for like he would attack me and I wouldn't have the right block. Actually, my second opponent kind of destroyed me. Like he like had the nuts. At one point, I in game two I decided an unexpected outcome with my self destruction technology, and I thought to use his hand. He had a block on every zone, and then he just peels off the top, knock on blow, uh, armor kind attacks.
That'll do it.
Like, well, outplayed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um my run went a little different. I ended up with the same losses and draws as Broberg. By the end, I was 2-1, but I did play out the full thing because my final loss wasn't until round 5. And at that point, I was like, well, you might as well go for
Get the top 32 points.
Go for the top 32 points because my goal is if I get top 32 at all 5 regionals I'm going to, that'll be 180 of the world's points I need, and I can get the final 20 in LCs without any issue. So like I met my goal. I took Smiling Titan. It's a deck that like I was really excited to take to the tournament. And like I think actually played pretty well into the expected decks. Like the Deviljin I played against, I beat. I didn't face any Nicks because for reasons we'll talk about a little later, I end up IDing against one Nick. And so I didn't really face the meta. Instead, my losses were to round 1. I go up against Calvin Harrigal, I think is his last name. Wub, as people will know him. On a evil Elder Togro deck that ran 4 Barrier Shields, 4 Fear Swings, and 3 Tetra Terror Onslaughts against my deck that hates when my speed gets set to 0. So I cried. That was about as bad of a round 1 matchup. In fact, Barlow, who didn't end up making the event, was running a very similar deck, or was going to run a very similar deck, and he described it as the anti-Justin deck. So for that to be my round 1 opponent was miserable. Then, like I said, my draw was to my teammate, Nick Reagan, on Nick Reagan. And I want to save why I ID there until we kind of talk about what went right and what went wrong this tournament. And then my loss was to Andrew Porat, who ends up winning the whole thing as King Ghidorah. I actually have it where I have the lethal line in overtime on game 2. But if we drew at that point, we were both out, so I gave him the win because there was, he took the game 1, and I'm like, look, dude, you're my friend. I don't want to like say, no, we have to draw this. I'm going to kill you right now and have us both be out. So I gave him the win. So in other words, for that 3.5 hour match, it's my fault you guys have that 3.5 hour finals.
Yeah. All I can think is just like Tim will. If the next event you go to, the next major we're at, if you compare it to Wub round 1, it's actually Destiny. It's actually Fade. You're gonna lose. I'm sorry. It's just how it is.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Wub is genuinely
Miserable.
like I mean, all my opponents really good. Parad was obviously fantastic because he won the event, but like Calvin always shows up with a deck that is not exactly a meta deck, and is usually playing on somewhat of a weird axis, but is always
played Reagan in Denver. It's not always.
Did he play Reagan in Denver? I saw him because I saw him when he was playing the Hanji 2 deck that was very similar to what Broberg was running. And then I saw him when he was playing this one, Elder Togro. And both those decks like play in kind of a weird way, especially this Elder Togro deck. But boy, is it cool. Calvin has such an interesting understanding of the game.
Yeah, I know, like, Evil Elders, like, crossed my UBS Ultra a few times and never, like, fully felt good about whatever pile I was putting together. So I'm not really surprised that someone, actually put the time in and iterated on a little bit and brought it to the event.
Yeah, I think
we're gonna skimp on this for the sake of time tonight, but I thought we considered having a deck list segment tonight, and like that deck is definitely on that list of like this is a really dope deck list. Really doing some novel ideas.
Yeah, if we ever have a time to go back on decks, I think exploring that one would be like really cool, like late, because I think that deck is insanely interesting. And
it sucks is dead format all though.
Yeah, true.
And what also sucks is like who has the June? It's OCE that has the June regional, right?
Yeah, the next one coming up, yeah.
And since OCE does, like, some of the players talk to NA and EU, but like a lot of them kind of stay in that circle. We're gonna kind of have like very little format innovation. I think be very public until we start getting close to that July event.
It kind of depends on who goes to Jacksonville and how hard they decide to try, right? Like. If people bring their maximum toxic decks to that event, or do they bring like their good decks, but some people are going to
remind me what's happening in Jacksonville.
A $2,500 open series tournament.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, the
Cool.
Stark Dark.
I forgot that was in Jacksonville.
Yeah, they've got 30 something signups at this point,
Yeah.
so
Nice.
it won't be nothing.
Yeah, and yeah, if you guys aren't aware, pay attention to the Jacksonville Open Series. It's on UGN. It's been plugged on Facebook and places like that. If you can go, it's a chance to win some money. If you think you can win, you will probably make more than the cost to get there. But
I mean, if the cost includes a plane ticket, maybe not. But yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah,
Depends.
it just
how
depends
far.
on where you are.
Yeah.
In any case, I think it's going to be a lot of great energy. It's going to be a lot of universes.
I know a
and
lot of top
great
players are
community.
going, so
Yeah.
it'll be a really fun
It's a way
time.
to try something out before Louisville.
Yep.
In a competitive setting.
Yep, absolutely. But before we kind of move away from ABQ before or not, I kind of want to talk about broad scopes, what was done right and what was done wrong at this event. Because I think there was a goal established by UVS Games very publicly that like they were going to scale up regionals and they were going to be doing more, and regionals were going to feel less like just a tournament and more like a celebration of universes in its community. And a lot of people were kind of frustrated after Denver, where it just kind of felt like another tournament. So I'm kind of curious and kind of just spitball from Broberg. What did you think? Did you think that we started to see scaling up happen here? Because you went to both.
Yeah, I think that if we we plot this on a line, right? We have like nationals. All 3 years now, nationals has been a really a big deal. In various ways, various levels. Like the first nationals was just a huge event, stuffed into a bunch of different ballrooms at a hotel with a bunch of vendors there. But nationals year 2 was this huge big thing. We had all these special promos laid out for it and everything.
The giant cards, the 400
Yeah,
players.
giant cards, absolutely, yeah. Nationals last year was again a big celebration of the game. Actually, there wasn't maybe as much special as year 2 was, and then but the regionals were kind of just a lot of times it was like kind of a bunch of gamers together in a hotel room and play the game for a while, and there's commentary and stuff. In Denver, I think was largely in that same mold. Like we had slightly better promos, but it was still kind of the same shape of things. Albuquerque was was the line sloping upward. I think there was a lot more. I imagine I'll leave you to talk about the thing I think you're about excited to talk about. But it felt like there was more attention, and maybe this is I wasn't in the summit, but like the summit was there, and I feel like there was a bunch of energy kind of in the around the summit and around sort of branding and marketing stuff, signifying, hey, here's a place to play Universes. Universes is a great game. There was a bit more. The side events obviously been iterated upon. The prize will have been iterated upon. I think that was a little stronger in that way. I think they had, obviously they iterated on the shape of the side events and how those get paid out. So it was a little bit less of a horrible grind and more of a, I don't know, not a horrible grind.
Yeah, I mean, I think the payouts were a little bit better, and I've heard that in some cases they like it. I heard a story of like someone who signed up for a boss battle, and they just kind of showed the TO a pile of Karasu decks, and they're just like, okay, here's your tickets.
I currently have those Karasu decks. I wasn't the one who just showed the cards, but we're gonna talk a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about that when it comes.
But yeah, I think I can imagine. Obviously, I wasn't there, but I can imagine just the sheer difference of having 5 or 6 probably UVS Games people there versus just Levi.
Yeah,
and perhaps with and so I saw a picture. Josh was there. Obviously, anyone related to the summit was going to be there. Mm-hmm. So that makes a difference just in terms of how much it looks like the company cares about the event.
Yeah.
When they're actually sending a bunch of staff. We'll see what Louisville is like. And then, the somewhat iterated, prize wall, prize structure. I know what you're going to talk about. I don't know if that was UVS Games run. I guess you just go ahead and talk about it.
Yeah, we'll go and start with this because like there are a lot of ups and downs I'm going to want to talk about, but the big thing I end up liking the most, and it's funny because this concept is something that when Tam brought up to me was a thing he was running in events, I kind of shot it down. I was like, that's not going to be good. That's not going to be like feel like it fits. Was on Sunday, I think during top 8, they ended up having a cosplay contest. And the energy that I felt that brought to the room was really good. For context, like I had actually just spoken to Broberg and a couple of others the night before when we were doing our Dragon's Horde event. That like, hey, I would really like I think we need more community events that are just like people socializing, hanging out, really building up the community rapport. Which can be a little hard at times because most of the people here are introverted nerds, but in theory, like it would be great to get people to kind of interact and socialize more. And this cosplay contest was kind of a great way to bring some of that. You didn't have as many people like talking to each other and things, but like the fact that we had 8 or 9 people, I think by the end, come up, show their stuff, show their costume. Everyone cheered them on. It just created a ton of energy. In terms of was it run by UVS Games, if my understanding is correct, Anna Margaret from Anna Margaret Cosplay was the one who was pushing for it, and that's why she was one of the judges. And it ended up, UVS Games finally said, yes, we'll do it. You know, you judge. She brought a friend who was dressed as Annie, who I am blanking on the name of, so I am sorry about that, to help judge. And they ended up giving away an insanely cool prize as well. I don't know if people have really talked about it, but the person who won the contest was given a custom-made hunter's dagger from Solo Leveling.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
I think if I understand the story right, it was made for Brett Pendragon, and he wound up donating it to this cosplay contest. I think that's the story. If I'm wrong on that, again, I apologize, but it's just what I've heard through the grapevine. And like I think that ended up also being really cool. That was one of the coolest like prizes that was given at this event, and that kind of includes some of the main event pricing. Like that's just such a really unique and interesting thing. So, I think that was so great. I'm all ready because there's some talk that they might be looking at doing it again, given the reception to it. I'm already looking like, what could I cosplay as at Louisville or Toronto or any of these tournaments that might be doing it again. I thought that was
as long as he doesn't cosplay as Smiling Titan, we're good.
I've had multiple people ask me to do that. I said, guys, you do not want to see me shirtless all Sunday. Sorry.
Dude, just get a muscle suit. It'll be fine.
No, if I get
muscle suit and kind of deflate it.
If I get a muscle suit, I am putting on a lion's mask and I'm going as King from Tekken. That is my only option at that point.
Okay, that's pretty good.
I'm down.
And I will only speak in growls all day. But
like normal.
Yeah, like normal. Yeah, there you go.
Just stalk Phil Birch, notable King player of yesteryear.
Give me my last name back.
But so yeah,
King only needs one name.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, so that 100%, like if there was anything I could have endorsed from ABQ that felt really out there and like a real experiment that worked really well, it would be the cosplay contest. And I encourage anybody, if they do it again at Louisville, who is interested to please sign up. I see Ross is posting in chat right now. Yeah, one of the funniest things happened for the cosplay contest was MGLA, a bunch of the MGLA people showed up in sillier costumes. Like Nate showed up as Barrett Bryant. I think it was Mitchell showed up as Jacob Johnson.
Yeah, he did.
And,
he had a little Sharpie chest hair.
And then Jacob showed up as Sung Jin Woo, but what made his really funny was he took a Leonardo mask and tied it to the waist, and one of Leonardo's like weapons. I was like, yeah, I killed Leonardo, which was just like really funny from.
It was good for XP. I mean,
yeah, you know, he gives you a ton. So, genuinely, glowing endorsement. If we do more of those, I think it was a really fun community event. I know Broberg, you said that like it was kind of disruptive.
Yeah, it was rough for me because I had signed up for people talking to me to sign up for side events, and I wanted to play some side events, and our standard flight only finally fired several hours later. Actually, I did a pre-release sealed that I signed up for second. That fired pretty quickly, and then after I finished that, the standard one fired, and we started our round kind of like 10 minutes before the cosplay contest started. And I was busy getting destroyed playing Tam's Beast Titan deck against Wub's Zeke Yeager deck from Newstat, which does a whole lot of crazy stuff and generally is very difficult to fight. blows up my stage repeatedly.
Yeah.
Has almost a set of filled with doubt to seal my shift attacks so they don't shift anymore. Very bad times. And while I was trying to navigate that match, and also on top of that, also these are very complicated, lots of moving parts. Lots of backups in play, lots of math to calculate. The room is exploding in cheers, and there's a loudspeaker, and there's loudspeaker people talking over loudspeaker announcing what's going on in the contest and introducing the contestants, and it was incredibly loud in that room.
Yeah, I think it'll
So,
be interesting trying to figure out how to like hit the middle ground here. I see Paul suggesting that it moves to that there's another room for side events and cosplay contest. I don't like the idea of a cosplay contest being in another room because I don't think enough people would have shown up
Yeah, you want people to
for
be there.
that. I think that's
yeah, I
when
think
you
it's I think it just needs to you just need to not schedule your rounds.
yeah, just don't schedule your rounds around it. I don't know if UGN has a way to pause the timer. If they don't, they should. But like if you just like paused most of the side events going on and said, all right, we're pausing the timer. We will be for all your events. We'll be restarting it after the cosplay contest. I think like most of that issue would have been solved.
I mean,
Yeah, I think
this would have been, I assume, like people, walk up to the stage with their cosplays and the judges, take down their notes. They show off what they're doing. And this whole thing takes like 30 minutes or something.
Yeah,
right?
it was like
Right.
30 minutes. And then also if you pause the timer, it's like, hey, everyone focus on what's going on. Focus on the community instead of being in your own little pods and circles. Like I think it would have made the experience better for those who are stuck in those pods right now.
Yeah, I think it was like it may have literally just been the four of us in that one standard pod. Because I think that the main like scheduled events were all wrapped up or maybe paused between rounds possibly.
Yeah.
By that point.
I'm going to spitfire some of the other great stuff. I want to make sure we have time to do some other stuff, and I don't want to hog too much at the time. So just spitfiring some of the things that went right and wrong. Second thing that went right. The champion exhibition match was a ton of fun. I'm glad they only played one game because it was really cool to see Garrett and Will spin their reels for one game. But my God, if I had to sit through those decks through a game 2 and 3 after the game 1 took 40 minutes, I might have lost my mind. I love Garrett. Great guy. Garrett's decks always run forever. And this was very much a Garrett bred deck. But it was...
He did not have a draw. I was shocked. In the Swiss, he went like 4-3 with no draws.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, actually, I forgot about that until I was looking in my closet. Like, and I saw the class cross your CCG jersey that Garrett wore. Garrett brought his down and wore his. I lent him the Dark Deku deck, like the air symbol,
Yeah.
Mitch Wub joint, and he actually tweaked it. I think he made some good improvements. He put in rifle arm to get extra momentum for his Fajin flurries. And yeah, he said he lost the mirror. He lost to. He said he lost a mirror that he was woefully unprepared for against the good symbol Deku deck, and then he had 2 winnable matchups in the rest of the day, and then he beat 4 people, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just want to kind of like say broad strokes. I think every tournament should have an exhibition match, one that the commentators are primed on in advance, so they can really talk about. Thanks so much, Linoko. One that the commentators are primed on in advance so they can make sure that they really are well versed in what they're going to comment on. And then show off different things. Like we've talked about that there's a Challenger Series format now. How cool would it be if we took one time and did a Challenger Series exhibition match before Top Cuts start? I keep saying a retro exhibition match that shows like 2 of the coolest retro decks. They did one at Denver, kind of. But
yeah, I think they just picked a pairing from the first round of the retro event.
They just picked a pairing, and the decks didn't play super well against each other. Like they weren't that interesting against each other. The commentators didn't really know what was going on. Like an exhibition match that really is like the commentators are aware and can show off the decks and talk about them really well. I think would be really great to do that at every tournament.
Yeah, I think broadly that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's like there's more than one way to play Universe. It doesn't have to be sitting down in the room with Ghidorah and Rodan, among many other things.
And Ross, you're absolutely correct. Chiming to champ card releases with these big events is a very good idea. I don't know how many they're going to be able to do because I don't know how. I know there's a lot in the pipeline. I don't know how many they're going to be able to do for these. I do hope they keep releasing them as pairs and doing an exhibition match for them. Third good thing, and this one's not necessarily UVS games, but in general, Mohawk Mike showed up with pizza. after the last round because of a bad thing that we're going to talk about later. But he showed up with pizza, and that was fantastic. It was a great social event. Like, people were, it clearly brought energy up in the room. And I think if they found a way to incorporate something like that, like more of those kind of celebrations, I get it costs kind of money, at the end of day one would be a great time.
Dude, my kingdom for a food truck. That would be so good.
Oh my god. The mess stuff, like, those are really the good things. The mess stuff was like, the format's only okay right now. It's like a 5 out of 10 format. I think we're going to probably talk Nick Reagan a little bit later on in the podcast, and I think that deck, the one that topped, is kind of a stinky deck in my opinion. And like, so I haven't loved where the format is, but it's not the worst format we've been in by any stretch of the imagination. And like, so the kind of the way the game just played at this weekend was just kind of meh for me, but not bad. I did Dragon's Horde, and I think Dragon's Horde was a plus for me, but a meh overall. For those of you who don't know Dragon's Horde, it's like sealed, but with 6 random packs from random sets that are donated by people in the pod.
I will say they cooked a little bit with the idea so that, as the founder of Dragon's Horde, the Dragon Horde does not take input from the sheep, right? A dragon does not concern himself, right? Like, you just get your packs. And they come from wherever the hell they came from. I love the idea that you get to choose, you get to kind of do a choose your own adventure with the people in the pod, but I think that the result of this one was quite a bit different in some weird sideways ways, especially with the Attack on Titan sets being so good for limited.
Yeah.
Actually, it was the most surprising thing to me. They made sure to seed everyone with 2 standard packs, and I played every single Attack on Titan 3 card I opened. Like,
I played almost all.
Without being even close.
Yeah. I played almost all of them, and I played Annie from Attack on Titan 3. So like,
yeah,
my deck that was playing like Annie and a ton of AOT 3, blue. I was up against, I will call him out by name because he's my local. I played Clinton Thomas, and blew his dude. Tomahawk Man deck out of the water.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He got eviscerated because Annie was like, I end up, I think, winning the whole thing if you go by the technical points because I think I was the only undefeated at the end. And Annie,
yeah, I got paired down
because you got paired down, and I beat Nick in the normal.
There were 2-2-1s. There were several 2-1s. Yeah.
Annie is insane in limited. Once you transform, being able to just do -3 damage and +2 to your next check just meant killing me was almost impossible. But I enjoyed it overall because I was playing a good character. I think it was meh overall. I think if you like the fact that you are okay getting an unplayable deck, Dragon's Horde would be a lot of fun. Or low playable deck. I won't say unplayable, but if you're fine saying I'm gonna push as the underdog because I got a terrible Mega Man character or her Heroes Clash character, and I'm gonna push through and still succeed, I think you'll really enjoy it. And I will say that is who I'd recommend Dragon's Horde for.
I still think definitely the peak Dragon's Horde, when we iterated it into Team Sealed and you get 24 random packs and you have to build 3 decks that actually have resource symbols and stuff, that's the good stuff. Team Sealed is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. It was a little crunchy trying to work out the symbols work. It was kind of finicky working on the symbols. But maybe the idea of just building 3 decks out of the Horde and you could play like keyword lock things and maybe have it work because you have the bigger pool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, my thesis continues to be for Universes Limited that you just either need more cards. You can't 60 random cards is not enough cards to build a deck out of.
Yeah.
Not any constraints, honestly. Like, not even with relaxed symbols and everything. Like, all which means you open your pack, say what are the 20 worst cards, and maybe the last five choices you make for that are interesting, but mostly they're not.
Yeah. I'm always astonished when people take 45 minutes to do their sealed pools because I'm like done in 15. Like,
the only reason I took longer in this one is
like 5 decisions.
I normally refuse to sleeve in sealed, but because of shift attacks, I had to sleeve. And because it's Dragon's Horde, so there were like 3 different card packs.
Especially, because you have UFS packs and Universes packs and
new Universes.
Yeah.
It was fun. But that was like, I enjoyed it, but it was kind of, I know some people did not have as great of an experience with Dragon's Horde. I think if you're at a regional, it was like late Saturday, give it a shot. If you enjoy it, you'll enjoy it. If not, you'll never have to do it again.
Yeah, it's funny. It's good for some laughs, and it's good for some, if you're like if you're confident enough in your gameplay to play some games with some very bad decks, like they can be interesting games
Yeah,
sometimes. They can
yeah,
also be very, very lopsided.
yeah.
Yes.
Don't play it expecting it to be the most like
See-
non-random experience. Like the definition of the format is extremely random.
Yeah, like chaos events like that are always crazy. You can end up with like reversals Nomu, or you can end up with a stacker character and only one copy of it. Like,
Um, the third and final meth thing I'll say, because it was brought up earlier, and if he's not posted yet, keep an eye out on UK Versus's channel, because you're going to see something related to this. People really learned how to cheese the prize wall at this tournament. And I'm saying that as one of the perpetrators of that.
yeah, I heard they ran out of airships on day one.
That was before people really got to cheesing. So what I know
Okay.
happened was Nick Reagan and a few people end up cheesing a standard pod because they gentlemen's agree to not block any moves. And it's just a turbo race of who deals the most damage. You deal the most damage, you get the one extra ticket. Otherwise, you guys gentlemen's agree to split all other tickets. And so that was like one cheese. And they were finishing the full like 3 rounds in like 20-25 minutes or less. So that was one cheese. And then the cheese that really kind of got spoken about a lot by a lot of people was the DFW crew. And I don't know if anybody helped the DFW crew, but I know the DFW crew was the one who brought it. The DFW crew, which includes, I will shout them out, Clinton Thomas and co. I know were two of the people who were really doing a lot of work on this deck. Showed up to boss battles with 5 Karasu decks. 4, you only needed 4, but they brought a 5th just in case anyone else wanted to play as well. Because the way the Karasu decks worked, they had 3 foundations in them. One foundation says blow up 2 things, the rest of it doesn't matter. And the other 2 foundations are reinforcements, so they build 2 face downs. The Karasu's first attack, all blow up 2, and the first Karasu plus is damage because you can only do 1 enhance per.
Yes. So if you don't know the rules to Dragon Horde, or not Dragon Horde, Jesus, to the PvE, everyone starts with 3 foundations at their play, chosen by cascading from their deck. Basically, you just flip until you find them. So you start the game with 3 foundations in play. So you build the deck with only 3 foundations; they're always in play. And then players take turns playing forms. You go around the table in a round, and during each attack that gets played, the turn player, the active player, I suppose, gets to play their enhances like normal. The boss just keeps passing forever. But then also you get 1 assist enhance from every player at the table.
Yep.
And
So if you use your assist enhance, all of them use their assist enhance to blow up 2, to build 2, and you use yours to blow up 2 and then do your Karasu plus damage. Second Karasu, by the way, all the attacks are 4 diff or less, so the checks don't matter. Second Karasu also then has everyone take their assist enhance to blow up. So the first one got plus 8 damage, the second one got plus 16 damage, and then the third and fourth Karasus, everyone uses their one enhance to declare Karasu. So it's plus 64 damage on the third and fourth attack. And so what that means is the boss never gets a turn. 100% of the time, no matter how that game resolves, the boss never gets a turn. And what that meant was you could resolve this boss battle in about 5 minutes or less. We did it in 5 minutes, kind of like goofing off the entire time.
I have an even faster speedrun strategy for you, Justin. It's called the save corruption trick, where you just agree to set the boss's HP to 0 and you win.
Yeah. So this is what I was going to say about this is that I don't think there's really much way of easily policing side events like that, especially when you're doing on demand. That being said, I think the real response should just be stock more promos.
Yes,
like,
that's
you
what
should not be running out of one on day one.
This itself was a meh. What leads it into a bad is the limited stock on some of the prize wall promos. Namely, one prize wall promo, which was Airship. Airship basically fully ran out after day 1. They had enough to guarantee anyone who top 32'd, or I think top 64, because you got one promo for top 64. Anyone who top 64'd could get their number of airships they wanted. So I got 2 as top 32, top 64. Pretty much everyone just said Airship. And then they had like a lottery for the last 6 on day 3. And I think there were 2 reasons for this. One, like people are realizing how to cheese in one way or another side events. And as a TO, you don't really want to stop that because TOs make most of their money from people paying for the side events from my understanding. So like, I get why they don't police it, but it results in like people are able to accrue them very, very quickly now. And
Yeah, well, you certainly don't want to like decide in the middle of the event that you're going to start policing it. Right?
Exactly.
You're
Right.
either,
you want to
Absolutely.
declare before the event saying, "Hey, we're gonna put a
well,
every 30
what you
minutes."
would do is you would simply like not either put an events per sign up per hour type of limit or
Yeah.
something like that, or say we're not going to do constructed boss battles, or we're not going to do on demand pods for prize wall points. Probably worse, but it's more policeable than like trying to track how long it's been since someone signed up for a thing.
Yeah, sure. And
I genuinely thought they weren't going to do boss battles this weekend.
Yeah.
I originally I think at some version of their side event post did not include boss battles, and I'm like, oh, that's good. They're not going to do boss battles for points because, and then they did anyway. So
yeah, I agree. Like I don't necessarily think there needs to be a limit. I think if people want to cheese it, that's fine if they supply enough.
yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to allow like that level of cheese, just sell people the prize wall tickets. Like let people pay like double price or whatever.
Sure.
$10 per ticket, just buy them.
Yeah.
If that's what people really want to do. And that's, ultimately, I heard the story that like one of the groups demonstrated the Karasu loop once and then just said, we want to sign up for 10 more events. Can we just not go through the motions and you just give us the tickets and we'll,
And that was not my group. Yeah, I'm aware of the group that did it as well. And I don't want to put them on blast because I don't know. I don't want anybody who might be mad at that idea. But I know the group who did that. And we played it out and we had fun playing. Like, I will say in fairness, I don't know if I'd have fun doing it again at later events. 1 hour of doing
there's a
Karasu
novelty
boss battles,
of it.
It was fun. Like I had
there's
a fun
novelty
time.
phase that will at some point wear off, but yes.
So the bad was the lack of prize wall for namely the airship, and I think the other problem was just like the promos kind of sucked besides of airship. Like the action that's the first form.
There were 2 6-checks though. 2 of them have 6-checks, so like it makes it. I'm not gonna finish this. I don't want to finish this.
Yeah.
I don't like where this is going.
the
People like 6-checks though. They do.
Okay, I think in fairness, I think Stoic Enmity, which is the 1/6 that like gives you a rage counter, is fine. I think that was a fine one to have as a promo. It's not great because it's
gorgeous.
It also looked great. It's not amazing because it's kind of character specific. It's not as great as like the Radiant Visage or the Throat Slitters, but I felt were more generically interesting cards to make prize walls. But it's fine. The one I think really bothered me was the action from AOT3, which I guess like is a cool enough event in the story. That's why you want to do the promo and the art is cool. But I don't know anybody that actually cared to pick up prize wall versions of that action because that action is pretty hard to play.
I have it 2, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure some people picked it up for the art, but I don't. I think that card's a little too
hard
hard
that card. That card's hilarious.
Brobrick, I want to see you.
You're not a dreamer. You're not a dreamer.
I have made multiple forays into Ultras saying like, oh, can I make a deck that's all this keyword and come up empty? But
yeah. Yo, Broberg, if you prove me wrong someday, please show up with that deck. Like I want to be
infinity.
Broberg, prove me wrong one day. Show up with a deck, and I will be happy to see it.
All right, like Tuesday, you got it. I will fight you with my Where All Paths Collide or Where All Paths Meet deck against your Gabe Boy Genius or whatever his name is. I'll beat your ass.
It's Gabe the Boy Wonder. Get your facts straight. I'm a Penny Arcade stan.
No.
Anyways, I'm just ignoring chat for a second.
Any last words on ABQ, I suppose.
I'm gonna say one last really negative, and like because the rest of it's been whatever. There's one really negative that upset me. No lunch break sucks, and no pre-announcement of a lunch break sucks.
Yeah, that was very poorly communicated and. Yeah, not great.
I think every tournament needs to have a lunch break. I think asking people to play for 8 hours and like if you do 7 rounds, 70 minutes, even if you perfectly time every round, is 8 hours and 10 minutes minimum. And that doesn't count any of the other things you might be doing, like looking at people's decks and things like that. I think you need to have a lunch break there. And if you're not going to have a lunch break there, because, maybe the venue only gave you specific hours, you need that to be clearly communicated so people can get big breakfasts in advance.
Absolutely.
I said earlier that, like, I hadn't said why I ID'd. The reason why I ID'd, I was against my teammate round 4, Nick Reagan, and we thought about playing it out, but it would knock one of us out, and we would have done it in normal circumstances, but we were both so hungry because we hadn't eaten for breakfast because we thought we were getting a lunch break that we said, screw it. Do you want to ID and get some lunch? And the fact that players are legitimately making the decision of like, hey, is it worth it to ID? Where yes, I'm doing it because it's a teammate in part, but also because I'm really hungry is a sucky decision that shouldn't be put on the players. And that's like the only thing from ABQ I really disliked. Overall, ABQ was way better than a lot of regionals I've been to. A big upgrade. I do not want to see another event that at minimum does not clearly communicate whether or not there will be a lunch break the day before. That's my big hit.
Yeah. Oh, long distance slops for one, the hotel apparently not having air conditioning, which sounds awful.
That does sound awful.
It was not the hotel was not great.
And other slop just for like being Albuquerque and being so like out of the way for voluminous numbers of players.
Yeah, shout out to the hotel being right there at the airport. I literally walked there from the gate. That was dope.
Okay.
The DFW crew was pretty offended that they listed New Mexico as South.
Yeah.
Because that not only one is New Mexico debatably not South to begin with, but two, Albuquerque does not really have a local play group that would be considered one of the South U.S. top local play groups. Meanwhile, Texas, and I know a lot of people, there's a lot of controversies about playing in Texas, so I don't want to get too much into that. Texas does have like 3 play groups. Like Austin has a good number. I think San Antonio has a good number as well. I know Lubbock is Let's Talk UVS. You're mentioning Grapevine. That's the DFW area. DFW has our play group. It didn't have to be Texas, but I don't know why the South one was not a area with a clear play group behind it. Besides money. I mean, the obvious answer is money, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of these have been any of the US ones have been areas. I don't think there's a Louisville play group either, right?
yeah.
So, who knows where the Southeast one's going to be at this point.
Yeah. So I liked it. It's a step in the final thoughts. ABQ is a step in the right direction. There's a lot I really loved. If they keep the stuff I really loved and they fix some of those things I don't love, by the time Worlds comes around, I will be very excited for where the state of our regionals are. Broberg, do you have any thoughts you'd like to echo there? I know I've talked a lot.
I think that's about the shit, but yeah, I think I agree. Like, it was a good event. It's a point on an upward slope, and we got a lot of room to grow before I think where anyone will be completely satisfied. So,
all right.
I will say one thing. I do think that we should do more for our tournaments, but having gone to other types of card game tournaments, we already do what they do, if not a little bit more. So, like the cosplay contest is already much better than anything I've been to for any Magic event ever.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it sort of depends on the card game you're looking
Sure.
at. Right? If you're looking at
Sure.
like the really big card games that they have a bazillion Grand Prix or whatever that they can't be doing a big thing for all of those. It doesn't. They have too many of them.
Sure.
And there's a lot of third-party contracting. Like some other smaller card games here. I haven't seen what they do at Altered Events, but just knowing that team, I imagine there's some stuff going on there that I know Dan Green would talk all the time about how much Grand Archive does with their 6 people in a basement company or whatever the heck they have. And so, you can have other criticisms of those companies or those games, but there's a small upstart company energy to it to
Sure.
really trying to push their events.
Absolutely.
I will say if you give me win a giant card as a side event at an upcoming regional, I will not say a negative thing about that regional. That's like my dream side event I want back.
You mean a real giant card?
Yeah, not the stupid double size card.
silly.
Give me like a real giant card that I can put up
yeah.
on my wall, and I will forgive every sin UVS Games has ever done.
Yeah, we're
Get
talking.
a voucher and they'll print you the giant card of your choice.
Hang on, hold on, dude.
Whoa.
That would be insane. I would be so happy for that. But yeah,
Damn, I hate that's what reminded me that I had floated the idea in my head about having a landscape card art for Kevin Broberg 3, and I have
Oh, that would be cool.
I talked about that in Denver with Brownlee and completely forgotten about it until just now. So it'll have to be Kevin 4 that does that, but I don't even know why that tripped that in my head either. Like it's a very random connection to make. Anyway, y'all want to talk about y'all want to yap about the meta? How do you feel about the meta right now?
woohoo, I saved a card just for this occasion. Let's talk a little bit about the top decks, and we're in. So we've said it. We're in kind of a lame duck meta.
Yeah, it's a lame duck meta. Let's talk about it anyway, because
Yeah.
we could speculate wildly about what's coming, but first we gotta know where we are. And surprisingly, where we are is actually Nick Reagan 3 times, the chaos symbol 3 times, and then some wall decks that are actually good.
And of course, the 2 wall decks that are pretty good are Godzilla characters.
Yeah.
Big old kaiju.
Yeah, it definitely, I'm a grumpy mid-rangey player, right? Self-styled anyway. That's how I like to think of myself. And so, naturally I look at the after the UK top cuts was kind of like this too. Most, if not all of these decks are either trying to min-max their win on 2, right? Or win as soon as possible, or trying to min-max, how big of a wall can I put up? And there are going to be metas that are like that, right? It's not always going to be, the old 2023 metas where you had like this like mid-range soup of like mid-range controlling momos and overhauls and mid-range aggro Giros and the occasional, full send Giro or whatever that usually didn't quite get all the way and that kind of stuff. But it is definitely a bit jarring to see the complete absence, because what I'm used to those, middle of the road decks bubbling to the top usually. In most cases historically, either there's been, and we might be in one of those situations now, either there's been a really crazy aggro deck that's gotten banned, or the like mid-rangey decks have kind of won the day. It's usually been one of those 2 situations if you look at a lot of historical majors. And so, maybe the problem right now is just Nick Reagan. And if you were to remove, adjust that out of the picture, then the decks that need a little, decks that could afford to take a little bit more time to set up their late game scaling strategies and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think I'll let someone else speak, because I still want to figure out what I on this one.
Yeah, I think that it's really easy to have results orientation, right? To say,
yes,
here's what's happened, and therefore the new power rankings are that Ghidorah is the best deck in the game, second place is Rodan, and tied for 3rd and 4th are Chaos and Nick Reagan. And that's an appealing it's an appealing idea, and it's absolutely profoundly fallacious.
yes.
Like beyond description, honestly. Like there is a wide field, and the way that wide field interacts with both any given matchup and how people construct their decks, and like there's so much that goes into the results of a tournament outcome that is beyond that simple one-dimensional power scaling, right? So much bracket luck, so much control check variance, obviously, so much like how much deadlock are people putting in their decks? Like all these things matter a lot, and how many edge cases are you preparing in your deck building, and then how much do you actually run into the matchups that reward that or punish that?
Yeah, we talk about, like to say, what if we played this tournament 10 times, right? Well, we'll never know. And it happens to be convenient in terms of telling a story that we look at the past 2 top 8s, and like 15 out of 16 of them fit this like polarized description. But there was, a bunch of X2 decks that we've alluded to here, right? We had, the Smiling Titan is probably neither a full send aggro nor full send defense deck. It plays a lot of defense, but it doesn't sit around forever. We had the Elder Togro deck that we talked about earlier. We had the Jacob Johnson's Irwin deck was kind of in this vein. And, we don't know if they played this 10 times, would they bubble out the majority of the time? Was this like their low water mark? Would they usually make top cuts? It's really hard to say, right? It's just, you can look at what did happen this one time and react to it, but ultimately it's guessing with one data point.
Yeah, and for my part, I actually am going to take a rare stance of not just coping with number 1 about something. I hate this Nick Reagan deck. I hate everything it stands for. I hate the way it talks. I hate the way it walks. I hate the way it's dressed. Like all of it.
Guys,
I hate it.
Guys, mark the date. Kevin has said a negative thing about a deck.
And,
Yeah,
and the
like,
thing
this
is,
is-
like, there have been times you could catch him saying a negative thing about other decks, but usually it's because Jeff's been running it at locals. Jeff's not even running this at locals.
Yeah, like this isn't a I am personally frustrated with my recent experience with this deck. I think this deck is actually playing the game wrong. I think this is actually corrosive to the experience of the game. This is actually corrosive to the spirit of universes. This is how people are playing it,
I
and
think
this is actually wrong.
the thing that you heard a lot of people say about like the Air Nick Reagans that showed up in Swiss and some of the ways that they play in top it, especially the ones that showed up on stream in Swiss, was people were talking about like these decks did next to nothing on stream. And part of the reason why is these decks are some of the most ridiculous levels of variance in a way that feels so out of control for both players at the table that I have ever seen. The Nick Reagan deck is running like the top one TC's list ran 12 bad checks. Now that is out of 45 attacks, not 20 attacks, so that's not like
Yeah.
a wholly accurate statement alone, but it is running 12 instances where I might check a 2 or a 1. And if you hit one of those turn 1, the chance that you die goes up exponentially. And if you hit one of those on your first attack turn 2 or your second attack turn 2, you probably aren't going to be able to do much that turn. And the chance that you die, again, goes up dramatically. And I don't know how I feel about a deck that feels so ridiculous in that level of variance.
Yeah, and I think almost it's a 5-hand size character, right? And so it is investing its likelihood in winning into fewer cards, into higher variance, into the power level you get intrinsic to your face, and like that's a trade-off that I accept that people are allowed to make, that this is a valuable part of the game, that people can play it in different ways. But this is taking like a healthy rock paper scissors dynamic and turning it into rock paper shotgun.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's not out of either player's control what you're going to check, and this deck has tools to mitigate its variance, but those tools are intrinsically limited, and it's also bypassing the drawback mechanics of Warpgate Portal is seen next to no play because just as a raw object, like it's not really that good to draw it and play it, right? You're paying 5 difficulty to get a 5 mid-5 that's kind of a crapper. But in this deck, you not only don't have to draw it to actually get its effect, you don't have to you check it proportionally much less often than you remove it to Nick Reagan's enhance. And the cards you get can all be wildly overpowered because you're again not paying for the 2 checks proportionally as often as you will relative to how often you see them. So there's
Right.
a lot of brilliant design going into this deck. There's a lot I appreciate in the construction of it, but the gameplay outcome sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you're describing reminds me of Quan Chi, right? It's sort of a similar dynamic where what made Quan Chi powerful was he got to cheat the fact that 5-hand sizes get stronger abilities, but he was a 7-hander.
Right.
And what this deck is doing is it gets to cheat the fact that bad checks have better abilities by just pasting them onto other cards.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. And there's like a black pill I have also I seem to bring up. Like we're talking about, it's a 45 card ratio deck, 45 attacks. And bluntly, like to sufficiently randomize a deck is kind of a weird moving target. To fully randomize a deck is kind of mathematically defined as making it equally likely to be in any permutation. No one does that with 100 cards. You just can't do that with 100 cards. Some of your cards, you can eliminate the information you know about it. You can say, given any, if I like pick up a card, can I guess where it came from? You can do that much randomization, but like it is very difficult to randomize. Maybe it's not that difficult, whatever. It's very difficult. It gets harder and harder the bigger your deck gets. That the size grows literally. It's a factorial, right? There's 61 more times as many ways to randomize a 61 card deck as a 60 card deck, and if that number keeps growing, it keeps growing even faster and faster and faster.
I also think in a similar vein that like, how do I word this? The fact that Warpgate Portal is specifically one of the 1 checks it's running is crazy. Because you're saying it's hard to shuffle a deck, and you're right. This is now a deck that is trying to multiple times across its string potentially reshuffle its deck. The fact that in a over 100 card deck, these decks are, I believe, 117 cards, 116 cards if I'm reading the top one right. 116 cards. You are probably still have 100 left in the deck by the time you play that first Warp Gate portal on turn 2, or you remove that first Warp Gate portal, maybe 95 to 99. The fact that you are searching and then shuffling from that big of a pile feels miserable. And this isn't a power level feels miserable. It's not like, oh man, what it's doing is so strong. It's, oh my god, I have to sit here for 2 minutes while my opponent finds the specific attack in 99 cards and has to now reshuffle the deck, which is much harder to do with that big of a deck. That doesn't feel good. That's not a fun thing to have.
Yeah, and as you say, it's not about the power level that makes this specific criticism into a problem. It's just you're monopolizing a lot of time, and you're monopolizing a lot of just the raw clock, right? It's draining out of the round, and it's leaving your opponent bored while you do your taxes for 5 minutes. But on top of that, it is actually also a power level outlier. It is also, by a wild measure, one of the most successful decks we've seen in a while. This is, to some extent, it's kind of team mechanics. We're going to be a big enough game. Teams are testing together and saying, well, we think we found something here. We're all going to play the same deck, and we're going to put a lot of coins in the lottery, so to speak. Self-consciously knowing that they were rolling the dice with these terrible checks. But it's like they cooked with this, right? They did
right.
Good. I don't know if this is the best deck in the format. It's a very, very good deck. It's clearly the deck of the weekend, the most successful deck of the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that necessarily holds up against people playing the hardest wall decks, it certainly takes a lot of other people out of the room. You run this tournament again, I can probably cope and play Ymir anyway, but it's a bad idea.
I also think it's hard to define negative play experience. Because play experience is subjective. A lot of people said Smiling Titan was negative play experience. I enjoy playing it, and I've always felt fine playing against Smiling Titan. So it's hard to really define negative play experience. But that being said, I think a deck that feels like it is a game of Russian roulette where your opponent gets to shoot 5 chambers at you and only point 1 chamber at themselves feels miserable. And the way this deck plays, where if it gets one of those bad checks at an inopportune time, the game is probably over because it plays very bad defense, and 33 damage is not hard to do to someone at this point in the game. So if it gets one of those bad checks, the game can very easily be over. But those bad checks are uncommon enough because of how big the deck is and how many cards you check versus cards you remove. You end up hitting the cards way more than you check the cards. That it just makes the losses, when this deck loses, it often doesn't feel like your opponent accomplished something beating it, because it often loses
It doesn't
to
feel
itself.
satisfying.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone wants a deck to lose to itself. People want to lose a deck to win or lose because of what the opponent's decisions were. And this could turn to an argument of to what extent should bad checks exist at all? And I am not going to go to the extent of saying bad checks should not exist at all. I think there's a better argument 1 checks shouldn't exist at all.
Once upon a time, people were playing 1 checks in their defensive decks, and if they checked the 1, they were just like, "That's fine, I can defend myself."
Yeah,
right.
There have been periods where that's been a thing.
Yeah, and so there are times where these cards can exist and feel fine, and or at least not necessarily feel like
that card wasn't fair. That 1 check was not fair. Let's be clear.
Are we talking Coffee Samba?
No, we're talking about righteousness. But
oh god.
Oh yeah, what a hell of a card.
Yeah, I think there is certainly a space where we could talk about the intentional design of 1 checks that don't ruin the game when they're any good, right? And I think Warp Gate Portal pretty much straddles the line of either this is garbage or it is part of something that is...
Yeah, it's kind of a canary coal mine thing of if Warp Gate Portal showing up in Top Cut, something went wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think almost self-consciously, they knew that was the case.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm just frustrated that a deck like this is playing in this way. I don't know what you do to solve this. I don't, because it's a champ card.
I do.
Is it errata
Sorry,
to the sun?
No, ban him.
Yeah.
Oh, just straight up ban.
I mean, they could talk about doing something else, but why?
Because your champ card's the whole point is supposed to be playable.
Play it in cube, dude. I don't know.
It is very good.
To play anyway. It's fine.
Yeah, you could give it the kneecap errata or whatever and print more copies.
I'd rather they banned me instead of giving me maximum
Yes.
4, personally.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because like other formats and whatnot. Yeah, but
Well, Nick's already banned in retro.
yeah, I've never
It has its own
banned in
price.
Rochester
Retro,
retro for what
yeah.
it's worth, suspended
Sorry.
technically. But
The only retro anyone ever plays, but my bad. That is correct. It is retro.
yeah, I've never had a whole lot of sympathy for the like, but it's inconsistent argument. I think if you're
There's
There's
such an
a
unbelievable
wide range
level
of
bad
those.
ontology about Nick Reagan. Like, people have so
Yeah.
many stories that are just all wrong.
Yeah, so there's obviously a range of, but it's inconsistent, right? Me and Kevin will very often harp on City Rampage on consistency grounds, but usually if someone's talking about like the raw power level of a deck and that's like actually doing stuff, and saying like, yeah, but it's 1 out of 4 times it just blows itself up, so therefore it's okay.
Oh, I
It's
agree.
never like really flied with me, but it's something that you get a fair amount of someone is just trying to like defend something they designed or defend a deck that they cooked up, and a lot of times people do a really good job cooking up a deck, and the deck they cooked up a problem. It is what it is. I mean, Mark Tyner did this for like a year straight. I mean,
Yeah, I thought of the analogy to sweeping daggers, which is like, I think in an ideal, I realized at some point while I was hating on sweeping daggers, like on release day of it, that like I saw the vision of it. It's a really interesting card that makes you kind of improvise and find novel things to do with you can't necessarily plan ahead what it's going to do, and that's really cool. And I see that same kind of energy in Nick Reagan, and the problem is just that it's way too strong. It just came out much too powerful, and you need to have a balanced game first. When you have a very unfair, unlevel playing field between a polarizing strategy, well, you can ask, well, like, what kind of games do we want people? How do we want people to be losing, right? Do you want people to be losing to be getting outplayed or to have whatever like this, or do you want people to just say, well, you sat down and your opponent rolled a die and they rolled a 6, and so you lose?
Sure.
I think one of these is much less satisfying than the other, and
Well,
like I think go ahead. Yeah.
I think that gets back into kind of the idea of like you want wins and losses to feel like it's because of your opponent. You want it to feel like a back and forth game, and if you won, it's because you played better than your opponent or was running the better deck. And if you lost, it is because either you were running the worst deck or you played worse than your opponent. And a world where like in 100 games my deck is better, but 25% of the time my deck is worse because it's inconsistent, is kind of the worst state for a deck to be in that regard. Because then the losses are not my deck is worse or I played worse, it's I got the unlucky draw with my deck. And if we all wanted to actually just gamble instead of make strategic decisions, we could just go to a casino. Like,
Yeah, and actually, there's an element of there's like a paternalism in the game rules right now that enforces what you just described, which is that we had a time in like 2019 kind of era with Nightmare actually, where it kind of got in vogue to say, listen, I'm playing this character who has all these powerful 10 damage throws, and if I go second, I'm a disadvantage to win the game. And I've strategically calculated that my best play is just to try to play a 5 difficulty throw on turn 1. I will fail that check, a third of the time or whatever, roughly, and then I will be overwhelmingly unlikely to win that game because I thought that in the first place that I was behind going second, and I'm trying to like seize the advantage back by hitting the 5 check. And
Yeah.
we said, listen, we don't want that in universes. We want player 1 to go first and to have the first crack at the apple to attack, and player 2 has to defend first. They can't flip the script on the 2 and 3 to check the 5. Because we want the game to be about choices and decisions and not about flipping the dice, rolling the dice like that. And I think that's a good idea, and I'm very glad we enforce it in retro now. I think that is an improvement to the game system. I think we can do more in that direction to make it a little bit less unnatural than just saying arbitrarily here's an option not allowed. But it's better for the game. It is a very dangerous sign if anyone's even thinking like that, and if people are taking it to that extreme, because it sucks when we're just flipping dice. That when we're not making a complicated navigation through a maze of different options, we're just rolling dice and seeing whose dice came out higher.
that's really interesting because I hadn't heard like the history of how attack turn 1 was kind of done in historical game. Because I when I came in kind of with my hero, I actually liked like, hey, going second as Kirishima, you could make the decision to play hard and jab Because even if you check the 3, you were still not in really a disadvantaged state because you still built one off the jab
Yeah,
and could build
yeah.
out. I didn't realize that like there were periods of time where
Yeah,
like
there was a range. So you had like the Kirishima examples, you had the like Kodokan examples, which I was a little notorious for. Like I would attack on with Kodokan and just take my momentum. Ochako 1 could have done the same thing. But then you had you cases like that. You had I don't know about Infamous, but definitely a retro match. The 6 in my head is they were playing. It was a Shiva against somebody, and they just said,
Oh yeah.
"Yeah, turn 1, I'll just play my 6 diff.
Yeah,
if I
there
check
was
a
a
6, you're just gonna die." Like,
yeah.
and
Jesus.
and that happened, and so you had cases like that, and also there was a lot of concern about the All Might. And
Yeah,
people
all my 3 in particular,
going
yeah,
for,
counts the number of
All
cards in your
Might
opponent's
3.
hand.
Yeah.
And if you do, and he was
You go
tenacious, so you could
going
attack
first,
on
you
turn
attack.
1. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, look, you have 7 cards in your hand. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin, for what it's worth, go look up Diamond Crusher. The unerrated text is the 6th diff that he's talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes. Also, I'm really glad you put those in the word like that into that specific phrase there, or not phrase, but paragraph, Kevin, because like I have so many people who played in old UVS, who were mad when we stopped doing turn 1 attacking. They were mad when I talked to them about Rochester Retro, adopting that, and I couldn't find a good way to explain to them that attacking turn 1 is not the greatest idea, because they just like the idea of like a Mitsuri player just jabbing with his 4 diff for fun. If he fails, that's on him. Great. But like I like the way you put it, because that's a better way to explain like this is why we don't do this anymore.
Yeah. There are versions of it that feel fair and reasonable, and like a way for player 2 to claw back a little bit if they're doing it safely. But the ugly reality is that if you open the door to that, you also open the door to like, here's my Diamond Crusher,
Right.
And that's not cool.
I think this kind of is interesting when you expand it a little bit, though, because like Kevin Broberg has mentioned. I don't know why I used your first and last name there. Broberg has mentioned before that
World champion Kevin Broberg.
World champion
Podcast
Kevin
host.
Broberg.
It's Kevin here.
Yeah, if you're gonna use his full name, use all of it.
So Broberg has mentioned before that we are a gambling game, that we are a push your luck game, because we don't know whenever we play a card exactly how many land or foundations we have to tap to do our thing. You check the top of your deck and you're gonna find out from there. I think it's hard to always know where that line is, where variance is too much of a problem, or reducing variance is too much of a problem. Because like a lot of people hate the 4-check attacks. Obviously, at least I don't, and we named our podcast 4-checks cast for a reason.
There's 4 of us.
Yeah, there's 4 of us. That's true.
Yeah, Tim does not love project attacks like the rest of us.
I never obtained Jaw Titan attacks, so every time I like think about making a 4-check tag, I'm like, oh, I actually can't.
AOT 1 strikes
I don't
again.
want to pay $100 to fix that situation either.
Oh, they're that expensive now? Gross.
I don't know, probably.
But
Dude, I didn't get my last female Titan until like a month ago.
But people get really
I
upset.
literally just got my last female Titan in.
But people get really upset when we reduce variance, right? Like I've seen a lot of people really upset at 4-checks, they reduce variance. I've seen people really upset at like the 4 to 8 attack decks because the variance gets so low there. 80 to 90% of the time you're checking 5s. Where do you guys?
Yeah, I would say they might term it as they might use the word variance, but I think it's really getting at a difference in power levels, right? When you know that your average check is this instead of this, and you can play more powerful cards and the results of that.
Sure.
There's sort of a variance angle to it, like people might dress it up as that, but people come up with all sorts of rationalizations for all sorts of things that may or may not stand up to deep inspection.
So let me just ask kind of the broad question then. When do you guys think? Because we want variance in our game for a reason. That's why we check off the top of our decks instead of saying everything's a 5 or everything's a 3. When do you guys think variance goes too far? Because Nick's obviously over that line. When do you think variance goes too far?
I don't know if it's that. The design team, at least at certain points in times in their ban erratic articles, has expressed that they don't really like it when decks are killing on turn 2 too often.
Sure.
And variance is out of hand when, you can hit the high variance often enough for a given definition of enough to play, attack turns on 2 that are stronger than you realistically feel like it's fair to expect people to defend against.
Sure.
Right. And there's vibes on both sides of it, like how consistent is too consistent, and how overwhelming of an attack turn is too overwhelming. If you can high variance 30 a goldfish, is that really a problem? Probably not. If can, if 5% of the time you can do 70 on a ridiculous crazy turn, is that a problem? Probably not. But there's scales to that.
Sure. So it's kind of somewhere, if there was like a graph with the x-axis being like your ceiling and the y-axis being your consistency, it's somewhere kind of in that top
and
right.
It's all relative to the defense in the format too.
Sure.
But yeah.
But roughly speaking, it's somewhere like where those intersect in a way where the power level can be high enough in its ceiling and it's consistent enough that you will realistically see it at a tournament.
Ochako 2 is a notoriously high variance turn 2 kill machine 5-hand size deck that actually won a tournament, had lots of top cuts, and they never touched it because it wasn't too overwhelming. Sure. And it didn't go off quite often enough to offend their tastes. I think it was pretty close. It certainly offended me a lot, but
Yeah, and I think Ochako 2 actually is a good hook, because Ochako 2 had an on-hit trigger, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of conversation when you played against Ochako 2.
Yes.
I mean, to an extent, obviously, right? If she's hitting you with 7 speed attacks and you have a +3 block in your hand, you can't, blah blah blah. You can always check a 3 and just be very sad. But if you like a lot of playing Ochako 2 is a lot of playing around. Well, what happens if they can block this, and what happens if they can block the next one, right? Like, blocking Ochako is like breakering her, and God forbid you actually break her.
Right.
There's a element of gameplay to it, kind of that's
Yes.
inextricable from what's happening. And I think ultimately, it's kind of sidestepping the question almost of like, when is variance too much? It's like, well, when it gets in the way of good gameplay, or when it substitutes for good gameplay.
Yeah. So you're saying like you can certainly block Nick Reagan's attacks. They're the same +2 speed that Ochako was doing. They're not disrupting anything he's doing in particular. But that's like saying you could block Master Asia Asui's attacks. Like, sure, you can. Go for it. Yeah, a lot of good it'll do you.
I think the big difference there, though, is at least Nick doesn't have to hit you. He's just going to throw attacks until he kills you.
Well, he needs to hit you to deal damage.
Sure, but he doesn't need to hit you in the same way.
It's just a matter of how many attacks he gets to play with the particular combination of things.
But especially when he's doing budget pony by hitting sniping spies and things like that.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean that's what the deck's doing.
Yeah, most decks. So almost all, like, one of my big theories of universes and everything is that every deck needs 2 resources to win the game. Like, every attack turn has 2 gates, right? You either have enough damage or you have enough control checks. And you can have more control checks by clearing your card pool, by moving your checks, by playing cheaper attacks, whatever. And you can have more damage, right? Obviously having more damage, but also having like foundation in your stage that add damage, and like keywords like powerful
more
or whatever.
Physical attacks.
Yeah. And since Nick is this very powerful engine that gets to staple twice as many abilities on his cards, many of which are frankly overpowered and tuned around screwing you over 20% of the time or whatever on your build turns, he gets to have a lot more of these things. He gets to probably have a lot more turn 2s than anyone really should be doing. And this is my beef with Nick Reagan ultimately, is that he's overpowered.
I think I don't know. I will be honestly shocked if Nick Reagan doesn't get hit in some degree in June. Like, while they have been hesitant to hit decks in the past, especially decks that don't wind up winning an event, having 2 times in a row where I think he's had 3 in Top Cut and at least 1, if not 2, in Top 4. I think 1 in Denver, 2 here. Plus, like, the amount of people I've seen complaining about the play rate. I mean, again, we even got Broberg upset at the play style of this deck, and Broberg doesn't get mad at anything. I will be surprised if we don't see something happen to this deck, probably the character, in June.
Yeah, like I said, I've sort of abandoned expectations on ban lists, but that this would,
if there was a time,
Yeah, if there was a time to expect something, I mean, I could imagine, this is cynical, right? But there's probably at least one voice in the room that's like, this is why we shouldn't do champ cards. And there's probably an inclination to push back against that, right? And some like, rally to the defense of the champ card going on. But I think at this point,
And I've definitely seen some people, I've seen some community members kind of say that this is why we shouldn't do champ cards. And I don't agree with that sentiment. I still think champ cards are like one of the best ways to do like cool prizing that doesn't require a ton of money, which can get us into trouble with some of our IPs and things like that. And so like I'm glad we do champ cards. But maybe, as much as I love the guy, he's a teammate, I love Nick Reagan, maybe this was a deck that should have been a little more stress tested.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that the playtester buffed this guy to get to where it is.
I know
if you hear Nick say it.
I know he changed. I don't, because I know, but I think he got a little weaker because I think it used to be like, if I remember correctly, what I've heard from the grapevine. I mean, the card's out. I can talk about from what I've heard from talking like Nick and stuff. What this card was, it was going to just be like response once per turn or some number of times per turn. When a card is removed, you can grab an enhance from it. So you're going to be able to use like incubating.
You can do stuff on purpose. Okay.
And then so he was like, oh, that'll be fine. And then he saw incubating get revealed after he did that. And he went,
it was like, yeah,
guys, we can't.
That's a little bit too much agency.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah. So it went through a development cycle. I guess. Long story short.
And if anyone's, so the Nick's character, he really enjoyed playing some old characters, specifically one called Ava, whose second iteration had a promo which had a very similar shape of enhance, remove your top 8, +2/+2, and so it was a very high variance character, and that you had to kind of build a bigger deck. You got a cool, powerful ability, compensate for it. She was a 7-hand size aggro character ultimately, so you built your deck with just a bunch of random 4 difficulty attacks, and made them all very, very beefy. Because 2/2 used to go further back in the day.
Yes, it used to be.
And one of her support cards was called Technical Sphere, which has been flummoxing the community for ages and has been substantially curtailed in Rochester Retro because you can't multi-symbol anymore. You used to be able to build decks where if you got something removed, you have to just splice that ability in Technical Sphere no matter what else was going on. You have any card in the game, surprise, on this 5-diff. And so this is an homage to Ava and her support card Technical Sphere, which are both cards that Nick really liked from back in the day. And I almost wonder how much this was almost like a flanderized, being a 5-hand size makes it terrible. And we're just having to live in a metagame where having 35 health and 5 hand size is basically fine. You're just it's just more random. And if this was on a 7-hand size character, it would be balanced by just losing all of its games as player 2.
Yeah, and it playtesting for future formats is hard. I think
it is. Yeah.
You don't want to cripple yourself and not make exciting cards. I think you can be more conservative with champ cards because it's not. Obviously the champ wants their card to be nice and playable, but you're not ruining someone's favorite IP character or whatever if they're a little bit weak.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think with a character like Nick, at some point you need to appreciate that no matter how degenerate you think your playtesters are, even if you think you have some absolute heathens on your playtesting team, which I don't think they do, but even if you believe that your guys are really gross and coming up with sick, disgusting decks that are trying to warp the game inside out, it's not as bad as what somebody in the community is going to find.
Oh,
right?
sure.
Right.
You're going to get
Absolutely.
a team in the community is going to go decide what's the most degenerate, stupid nonsense we can do with something like this. And it's probably going to grade out higher than your expectations. So you always want to leave a little bit room for that.
Yep.
Almost in a tier sense, try to, especially your champ characters, try to aim your champ characters at quote unquote B tier or whatever. And if they're better than you expected, they're A tier. And I think Nick is just a case where they tried to edge him up to make sure this guy's A- tier or A tier or something. And then when he's a little bit better than that, you have a problem.
I mean, in the case of both Mitch and Nick Reagan, I think, it is entirely possible there was a thought of, these are the first champ cards in a long time. We want these to see some play because we want people to realize how exciting champ cards can be, how exciting it can be to win a champ card. And if your first champ card since Retro came out and they absolutely hit the floor, then people might care less about the pricing. I don't know. I'm not in the heads or a fly on the wall of the people who are playtesting these, but I would not have been surprised if there were some conversations like that.
Yeah, I mean, you never want to, and especially as one-off promos that are going to get that much focused attention. Like when you're doing a full set, you're going to have a Connie in there just because you're testing a full set. You're not going to give every single character the same amount of love and intention, but they're like, test these two and possibly test them against each other a lot. So like if one gets stronger, the other gets stronger kind of thing goes on, which happened with like starter decks sometimes back in the day. So it might have happened with the Godzilla Challenger decks, right? Look at Challenger deck tuning. If those were like mostly tested against each other, you can see how, rises all boats. But so like stuff happens like that, and it's just I'm sure they'll live and learn.
Yeah.
They just need to deal with this particular one.
Yep. And like and in fairness, like I will give some credit to the design team. I think like both Will and Garrett Brett are both really cool and fun characters. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to be good enough to really see competitive play.
Dude, I keep cycling on Will. Like he might be.
I mean, I think it's like
they're
super cool.
You're not going to have you're not going to not all of your characters are going to see competitive play anyway.
Sure.
What I always wanted was I want somebody to like either like it's a deck someone brings to their locals and has fun with, even if it's not competitive, or it's like maybe it never actually makes it into the competitive tables, but somebody like looked at this character, thought that maybe there's something here, and made a list or two. Right, and it provided some gameplay experience, even if it never made it to the table.
I've already made a Will list. Like I thought it was cool. I tried.
That's a successful card. People are making Will decks.
Yeah, so
it's already succeeded, even if it never shows up at the tournament.
Yeah, and so that I will give credit to the design team. And if all champ cards were kind of at the pair level of Will and Garrett, I think I would be fine. I'd probably be happier if more of the game was a little lower to that power level, because I think those are both like incredibly fun play spaces for those decks. But I will be happy if more champ cards are around that power level, or even like creeping into like a Mitch power level, because I think Mitch is a really cool design as well.
I hope that no one agrees how good my character is for like 6 months.
Yeah, that's the other fun.
I didn't expect that.
I was a little mischief. I always loved making those cards. I'm like, man, we'll put this card out there and nobody's going to agree on how good it is. It's awesome.
I will say when I read Tim Keefe 2, I think especially if you don't know the card pool around it, where there's all the doesn't count towards progressive cards that you can play or ignores progressive, I kind of went, this guy can't be like that strong, right?
Yeah, so did the design team. And so did I, right? Like, and part of that, one of the things about and one of the benefits to like them being sort of like stuck a year in the future is that they don't have as much of this problem compared to like old volunteer playtest teams or whatever. If you're on like a volunteer type playtest team like we had back in the day, like way back in the teens and whatever, your mind is going to be in the current meta much more so than any sort of imagination of the future meta. And the current meta, when my characters was finalized, was like, for a brief moment, it was like a 4 month window or something, but like 7 hand size sucked. If you weren't like giving egregious stats, if you weren't like a Quan Chi or something and you were 7 hand size for those few months, people just thought you were bad.
Sure.
It was like Goro and Akuma and things like that until Soul Calibur came out. And my character, like, yeah, you could play it on Earth, but you just play Cassie Cage. Come on, like, who's actually going to do that, right?
Oh god, yeah. And I was coping with Vega, and I would get bodied by Cassie Cage. Cassie Cage was my bracket demon. It was crazy.
Yeah. And so like those things happen where you're trying to balance cards, but like your impression is just doesn't match what's actually going to be happening down the road. And if you could guess that like, oh well, down the road such and such is going to be warped in such and such a way, then you change that thing anyway, so you still never know, right? If you identify like this is going to be a problem in the future, then you change it before you print it, and now you still don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
All right.
I'm excited. The FT3 meta. On the topic, you don't know how it's going to turn out.
Oh,
you sure don't.
That was a.
I'm playing
thing.
Annie, and it's fun.
I'm going to match Mielena's.
I've been playing Hanji 1. I haven't lost a game yet, and I hate my life.
Play something fun.
You need stronger opponents.
Or that.
Need someone to show up with
But-
Bakugo.
But I will give Justin credit where credit is due. I've been playing Forecheck Annie and is making Forechecks grow on me.
They're fun. I'm telling
They're
you,
fun.
they're fun.
They can be fun.
I think that that's a good place for us to kind of end today, especially like I say shorter. We've been still on for an hour and 20.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But relatively speaking, shorter because we started a little late. So let's go and start our wrap up. People want to plug their channels?
Yeah, I actually posted a video today. I'm not. It's not my proudest video ever. I think it ran long and had a bunch of problems, but we recorded it, so we posted it. We talked about our knot deck and some iterations to it.
Cool.
Runs a little long, but if you're interested, you can find it on YouTube/Cetonis, Cetonis. I make videos on there very sporadically, kind of when I have ideas. I might try to tackle this like new player series idea people were talking about the other day in a Discord. I'm starting to think a little bit about if there's something I can do for that where it's not something. I did some older ones, but they're like 40-minute diatribes. So I see if there's like something more condensed I can do.
I need to lower my standards as I look at my whiteboard with two whole ass video, like maybe an hour long video
Yeah.
sketches that I'm never gonna.
See, the number one reason
You're never actually gonna do.
the number one reason I wanted to push to start this is because if I wasn't doing something live streamed, I would be sitting there and procrastinating so hard on it. I'm already procrastinating uploading to the channel, which is bad enough.
Yeah, I wanted to do a video on like examining, doing the pre-round deck check, and then like they haven't done it the last couple of events, so I don't like that's not relevant right now.
Yeah, it's
And-
gonna be a shout out for what ABQ was.
Yeah, and what was the other one? I wanted to do something else, but it just like fell through and just stopped making sense for one reason or another. Oh yeah, I was trying to do some math on like how much spam to play versus how much your building out was, and both the results weren't very interesting, and my going second model was flubbed up in some way I could never figure out. So I gave up on that too. And so I go 2 months without posting a video.
I've been like meaning to like find a like what's the word, like Khan Academy type math course, like upper level math course. They can just like teach me what the math is on like the combinatorics, like the hypergeometric distribution. It lets you take. I have a deck of these kinds of cards.
I was just going to Monte Carlo it.
Yeah.
What's that?
I was just going to Monte Carlo it. I wasn't doing any of
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But like, there is a way to get the correct answer.
Yes.
With or without replacement. And like, I am pretty sure I took a course in college that was like within spitting distance of that. If I just like asked the TA, they could have helped me with this. And I've been for years I've been meaning to go back and have someone help me figure that out.
I promise you, Broberg, writing a Monte Carlo is 1,000 times easier than doing the math.
No, it's fucking not.
I love writing Monte. Dude, you give me the thing you need to write, I could write you a Monte Carlo in an hour. Monte Carlos are not hard to write.
Yeah.
Oh, good. You take
Can
my
you
video
do Monte
idea.
Carlo in your head? I can do a binomial in my head, bro. And it's close. It's pretty close to hypergeometric.
We have to use in Bard theory. We have to use both things. There are some things we can math out, and there are some things we just have to Monte Carlo. So
That's true.
it is.
I'm a programmer and I'm lazy, so I just write Monte Carlos for anything I'm even semi-interested in the stats on. I will go and say before people start tuning out. We are with the last thing I want to talk about, our channel, Forechecks Cast on YouTube. That's where VODs will be. It's a few weeks behind because I have had AP testing into finals, and the time I have not been doing that, I've either been prepping for Universes or playing 100 Line Defense Academy. One of those things I would consider a valid thing to be distracted by.
And it's 100 Line Defense.
It is 100 Line Defense Academy, 100%. That game is awesome. I will plug that game. But
Can't go 4-2-1 in 100 Line Defense Academy, okay? Yeah.
Can probably find a way in spirit.
So next week, Thursday, I will be unavailable as I will be in California. We don't know yet if they're going to set up OBS and
I already set it up to do the stream the other week.
Oh, then
I
sure.
have it.
Then they can then we will still probably be on with you three. If that changes, there'll probably be an announcement or something about it.
I guess I would have to make an overlay or something though.
I can send you the stuff I have for this overlay. At some point, we actually need to like set one that has our logo and everything.
We have a logo.
Technically.
It's the little one. It's the little chunky one that I have for our
Thank
Anyway,
God.
anyway.
It is summer.
Anyway.
Stuff like that's gonna be some of those is my summer goals, and I never procrastinate on summer goals. The other thing,
Tell us and we'll keep you accountable.
the other thing I am actually going to be plugging, most likely, because as far as I'm aware, Broberg and I are both free. If that changes, there'll be an update. But most likely on Tuesday, probably in our normal 6:30 start time, 6:30 CST start time, we will be streaming the first episode of what I'm hoping to be a series, History of Universes, or Universal Fighting System. We'll need to figure out which one we want to start with as a name. And we will be starting with the first 2 structure decks that ever existed, Gabe versus Tycho for the Penny Arcade structure. The game will be miserable. Broberg and I will be upset the entire time, but it will be very fun.
I will not allow my joy to be stolen by these garbage decks. All right. I'm committing to it right now.
So we'll be playing that, and then that will hopefully kickstart where we are going through the eras of the History of Universes, how the game has evolved, and you'll get to see what the game used to be before even Jasco owned it. So please tune in on Tuesday. I am really excited about this project. Will has been helping me log a ton of decks, plus I've had like Nick and others help me find a bunch of resources for it. So I am very, very excited. And I think that's just about everything. So thank you guys so much. Is there anyone we can raid right now?
Tam's on.
I will happily raid
So
Tam
excited.
if I can
I
actually
just got
learn how to raid.
Can you just like say raid?
I think there's like a button that says raid. Hold on.
We did this the last time we were all 4 here. You can do it again. I believe in you.
Yeah, hell, Twitch activity feed, I believe. No, that's not it. We'll figure it out. Hold on a sec. Oh, I have to exclamation mark raid. Thanks, Paul. I think Paul might have been the one who clarified to me last time. Did you lie to me? Do I have to just do exclamation mark raid? I've been lied to. Paul, you lied to me. I've been lied to. What the heck? Hold on.
Oh God.
I think we can kind of do it as mods, but I don't see it. I can review recent raids.
It's close to that. Hold on.
It says there's like a 10-second countdown after you do it. You do the /raid and then the channel name, and after like 10 seconds it'll ask you, according to the first result on Google.
Yeah, it looks like it's just
Oh,
slash
it's
raid.
slash,
Slash
not exclamation mark. Paul, you lied to me.
That monster.
Okay, we figured it out this
Nice.
time.
Ship it.
Bye, guys. We'll get it right eventually. We'll be real streamers eventually.
No, it won't.
That's true. All right.
Someday.
Raid.
Good night, everyone.
All right, and then we will stop.